Eleanor's breath caught in her chest as her father's palm slammed against the dining table, rattling the expensive china and sending ripples through her teacup. "You will marry Percival Montgomery by summer's end, and that is final." The declaration echoed through their grand Wyoming homestead in 1878, a mansion that stood as a testament to the Johnsons' wealth and status in Sheridan. "I will not," Olivia Johnson replied, her voice surprisingly steady despite the trembling of her hands beneath the table. At 22, she had spent her life being the dutiful daughter, the perfect society lady, but this was a bridge too far. "He is thrice my age, father, and cruel to his ranch hands. Everyone knows he beat his last wife." Her mother's eyes darted nervously between husband and daughter. "Olivia, please," she whispered. "Your father knows what's best." "What's best?" Olivia pushed back her chair, the scraping sound harsh against the polished floor. "What's best is not selling your daughter to a man who views women as property to be acquired alongside his land and cattle." George Johnson's face purpled with rage. "The Montgomery Ranch borders our eastern pastures. This marriage secures our family's future and expands our holdings. Your romantic notions have no place in the real world." "And what of my happiness?" Olivia challenged, standing her ground. "Does that have no place in your calculations?" Her father's expression hardened. "You have until sundown to reconsider your position. If you persist in this foolish defiance, you are no longer welcome in this house." The words hit like physical blows. Banishment. From the only home she'd ever known. Olivia felt the world tilt beneath her feet, but a strange calm settled over her. "Then I shall pack my belongings." Hours later, as the setting sun painted Sheridan's sky in violent shades of orange and crimson, Olivia stood at the edge of the property with a single trunk and a small leather satchel containing her mother's tearful parting gift, a pouch of coins, and her grandmother's silver locket. No carriage had been provided, no servant to assist her. This was to be her punishment, cast out like a biblical sinner, left to the mercy of the Wyoming wilderness. "Where will you go?" Her younger sister had sobbed as they embraced in secret. Olivia had no answer then. She had no answer now as she began the long walk into town, her fine shoes already gathering dust from the road. Sheridan buzzed with evening activity when she arrived, cowboys fresh from the trail looking to wash away the dust, merchants closing shops, saloon girls beginning their night's work. Olivia drew stares as she made her way down the main street, her expensive dress marking her as clearly out of place. The Western Star Hotel stood at the intersection, its painted wooden sign swinging gently in the evening breeze. With few options before her, Olivia approached the front desk, aware of how her voice quavered as she requested a room. "Just yourself, miss?" the clerk asked, eyeing her skeptically. "Yes," she answered, lifting her chin with what remaining dignity she could muster. "Just myself." After settling into the sparse but clean room, Olivia sat on the edge of the bed, the reality of her situation crashing over her. Banished, disinherited, alone. She had never before cooked a meal, washed a garment, or earned $1. What future could possibly await her now? Sleep came fitfully, and she woke to the harsh morning light streaming through thin curtains. The sounds of Sheridan horses, wagons, shouts of cowboys and merchants filtered through her window. This would be her first day of a new life. Somehow, she would need to find work. After changing into her simplest dress, though still finer than what most women in town wore, Olivia ventured downstairs. The hotel's small dining room offered breakfast, and she calculated how many such meals her limited funds might afford. "Miss Johnson," Olivia startled at the sound of her name. A woman perhaps 10 years her senior stood beside her table, her practical dress and sensible hairstyle suggesting someone accustomed to work. I'm Martha Wilson. I run the mercantile with my husband. The woman smiled kindly. News travels fast in Sheridan. I heard about your situation. Heat rushed to Olivia's cheeks. I see. No need for embarrassment. Many admire your courage. Martha glanced around before continuing in a lower voice. Percival Montgomery is not well liked among decent folk. His wealth buys silence, but she shook her head. That's not why I approached you. I understand you might be looking for employment. Hope flared in Olivia's chest. Yes, though I'm afraid I have few practical skills. Martha's smile widened. You're educated, aren't you? Read and write well. Yes, I attended Miss Porter's school in Connecticut for 4 years. Perfect. Our school teacher left last month to get married. The position remains unfilled. It doesn't pay much, but there's a small room attached to the schoolhouse where you could live. Olivia could hardly believe her ears. You think they would accept me, after my father? The school board meets this afternoon. Come by the mercantile at 2 and I'll introduce you. Martha patted her hand. Don't lose heart, Miss Johnson. Sheridan may surprise you yet. That afternoon, Olivia stood before 5 stern-faced men who comprised Sheridan's school board. She answered their questions about her education and experience with children, grateful for the summers she'd spent helping with Sunday school. Your father's position complicates matters, the board president, a stout banker named Willoughby, said bluntly. George Johnson holds considerable influence in this county. I understand, sir, Olivia replied, struggling to keep her voice even. But I am my own person, and I seek only the opportunity to contribute to this community. The men exchanged glances. Finally, Willoughby cleared his throat. We'll offer a 1-month trial. If satisfactory, we'll extend to the full term. Relief flooded through her. Thank you. I won't disappoint you. The schoolhouse stood on the edge of town, a modest single-room building with an attached living quarter no larger than her former dressing room. But as Martha helped her settle in that evening, Olivia felt something she hadn't expected: freedom. It's not much, Martha apologized, showing her the small stove and meager furnishings. It's perfect, Olivia whispered and meant it. Her first day teaching brought 12 children of varying ages, from 6 to 15. The older boys tested her authority immediately, but Olivia discovered an unexpected backbone. By midday, she had established order and begun assessing each child's educational level. By week's end, she had developed a system to teach multiple grades simultaneously and had won the respect of most parents. Most, but not all. Percival Montgomery made his displeasure known, pulling his 10-year-old son from school and encouraging allies to do the same. Olivia's father remained ominously silent, but his influence was felt as certain doors in town closed to her. Despite these challenges, Olivia found her routine. She rose early, prepared lessons, taught until afternoon, then offered additional reading lessons to adults in the evening, mostly ranch hands and shopkeepers' wives, eager to improve their literacy. The small extra income helped supplement her meager teacher's salary. She was returning from the general store one Saturday afternoon, struggling with a heavy bag of supplies, when disaster struck. The sound of pounding hooves came too quickly for her to react. A group of cowboys raced down the main street, clearly drunk and showing off. Olivia jumped backward to avoid being trampled, losing her balance on the boardwalk's edge and tumbling painfully into the muddy street. Her groceries scattered, and pain shot through her ankle as she tried to stand. The cowboys had continued on without stopping, leaving her sitting humiliated in the mud. "Those idiots ought to be locked up," came a deep voice, and a strong hand appeared before her. "Here, let me help you." Olivia looked up into the most startlingly blue eyes she'd ever seen. set in a sun-bronzed face partially shaded by a wide-brimmed hat. The cowboy standing before her was tall and broad-shouldered, his expression a mixture of concern and controlled anger. "Thank you," she managed, placing her hand in his. His grip was firm but gentle as he helped her to her feet. She winced when weight hit her injured ankle. "You're hurt," he observed, instantly adjusting to support more of her weight. "Let me help you to the doctor." "My groceries. We'll gather them after," he assured her, already bending to collect what could be salvaged. "I'm Hank, by the way. Hank Adamson." "Olivia Johnson," she replied, watching as he efficiently gathered her scattered purchases into the bag. Something flickered across his face recognition, perhaps, but he said nothing about her name. Instead, he offered his arm. "Lean on me, Miss Johnson. Doc Miller's office isn't far." The walk to the doctor's office was slow and awkward, but Hank showed remarkable patience. He kept up a steady stream of conversation, pointing out buildings and sharing small anecdotes about town residents that occasionally made her laugh despite her pain. "You're new to Sheridan," he observed. Not a question, but not quite presumptuous either. "I arrived about a month ago," she confirmed. "I'm the school teacher now." "Ah, that explains it. I've been on a cattle drive to Cheyenne. Just got back yesterday." He adjusted his support as she stumbled slightly. "You're doing well, handling those steps like a champion." Dr. Miller diagnosed a minor sprain, wrapped her ankle tightly, and instructed her to stay off it for a few days. When she expressed concern about her teaching duties, the doctor waved dismissively. "Monday's 2 days away. Rest tomorrow and you should be well enough by then." "Nothing's broken, just strained." Throughout the examination, Hank had waited patiently in the outer office. When she emerged, he stood immediately, hat in hands. "May I see you home, Miss Johnson? Those groceries are still heavy and that ankle needs minding." She should have declined. A proper lady would never accept such assistance from a stranger, a cowboy, no less. But there was something in his direct gaze that spoke of simple decency, and practicality won over propriety. "That's very kind of you, Mr. Adamson." The walk to the schoolhouse took longer than usual, but Hank filled the time with questions about her teaching and observations about Sheridan that revealed both intelligence and wit. When they reached her door, he handed over the groceries but made no move to leave immediately. "Miss Johnson," he said, twisting his hat in his hands, "I don't mean to pry, but word gets around in small towns. I heard about your situation with your father in Montgomery." Olivia stiffened. "I see." "No, please." Hank looked genuinely distressed at her reaction. "I only meant to say that I think what you did took real courage, standing up for yourself that way." His blue eyes met hers directly. "A person deserves to choose their own path in life, especially when it comes to who they love." Something warm unfurled in Olivia's chest at his words. "That's—" "Thank you, Mr. Adamson." "Hank, please." He settled his hat back on his head. "If you need anything while that ankle heals, I'm staying at the Crawford boarding house. Just send word." With a tip of his hat, he was gone, leaving Olivia with an odd feeling of disappointment at his departure. Sunday passed slowly as Olivia rested her ankle and prepared lessons for the week ahead. She found her thoughts repeatedly drifting to the kind cowboy with the blue eyes. There had been something in his manner respectful but not deferential, confident but not arrogant that intrigued her. Monday morning brought an unexpected knock at her door before school began. Opening it revealed Hank, hat in hand again, looking somewhat uncertain. "Morning, Miss Johnson. I hope your ankle's improving." "Much better, thank you," she replied, surprised by how pleased she was to see him. He nodded, seeming relieved. "Good, good. I brought you these." From behind his back he produced a small bouquet of wildflowers. "Nothing fancy, but I thought they might brighten your desk." Olivia accepted the flowers, touched by the simple gesture. "They're lovely, Mr. Adamson." "Hank," he reminded her with a smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "I was wondering. That is, if you're not otherwise engaged, might I call on you this Sunday? Perhaps a picnic by the creek if weather permits." The proper response would be to decline. She barely knew this man. Yet the same instinct that had led her to refuse, Montgomery told her now to accept. "I'd like that, Hank." His face lit up with such genuine pleasure that Olivia couldn't help smiling in return. "I'll come by at noon on Sunday then." As the week progressed, Olivia found herself looking forward to Sunday with increasing anticipation. She saw Hank occasionally in town, exchanging brief greetings that somehow left her cheeks warm and her heart beating faster than normal. Martha noticed, of course. "That Adamson boy has taken quite a shine to you," she observed while helping Olivia select fabric for a new, more practical dress. "He's a good man. Foreman at the Triple R Ranch now, and they don't give that position to just anyone." "We're just friends," Olivia protested, though the words felt inadequate. Martha's knowing smile suggested she saw right through this claim. "Of course. Though I should mention your father was in the store yesterday asking questions about you." Olivia's stomach clenched. "What sort of questions?" "How you were faring, who you were associating with. I kept it vague." Martha's expression grew serious. "Be careful, Olivia. George Johnson isn't a man to cross, and neither is Percival Montgomery. They're both used to getting their way." The warning cast a shadow over Olivia's mood, but she refused to let it spoil her anticipation of Sunday. When the day arrived bright and clear, she dressed in her new blue calico dress, arranging her hair in a simpler style than the elaborate coiffures she'd worn in her previous life. Hank arrived precisely at noon, driving a small wagon rather than on horseback. He'd cleaned up impressively fresh shirt, hair neatly trimmed, boots polished. The appreciative look in his eyes when he saw her sent a pleasant flutter through Olivia's stomach. "You look beautiful, Miss Johnson," he said, helping her into the wagon with careful hands. "Olivia, please," she replied. "If I'm to call you Hank, it seems only fair." His smile was worth the small impropriety of such informality. "Olivia it is, then." He drove them to a lovely spot by Goose Creek, where willows provided shade and the water gurgled pleasantly over stones. The picnic he'd prepared was simple but thoughtful: fried chicken, cornbread, apple pie from the hotel restaurant, and lemonade in a glass bottle. As they ate, Hank told her about growing up on a small homestead in Nebraska, losing his parents to influenza, and making his way west at 16 to work cattle. Now 30, he'd worked his way up from cowhand to foreman through hard work and an uncanny understanding of cattle and horses. "The Triple R is a good outfit," he explained. "Old man Russell treats his men fair, pays better than most. I've been saving to get my own place someday." "You want your own ranch?" Olivia asked, genuinely interested. Hank nodded, his expression softening into something dreamy. "Nothing huge. Just enough land for a decent herd, good water rights, a place to put down roots." He looked at her then, something vulnerable in his gaze. "A home worth coming back to." The simple sincerity in his voice moved her. Olivia found herself sharing her own dreams, not just of teaching, but of someday perhaps starting a proper school, one that might even prepare young women for college as her school in Connecticut had done. "Wyoming's already given women the vote," she pointed out. "Why shouldn't we lead in education too?" Instead of dismissing her ideas as fanciful, as her father might have, Hank listened intently, asking thoughtful questions and offering suggestions. When the conversation turned to books, Olivia was delighted to discover he was surprisingly well read for a cowboy. Not much to do on winter nights except read, he explained with a sheepish grin. "And Mr. Russell has quite a library he lets us borrow from." The afternoon passed too quickly. As they packed up the remains of their picnic, Hank grew quieter, seeming to wrestle with some internal dilemma. Finally, as he handed her into the wagon, he spoke. "Olivia, I want to be straightforward with you. I like you. More than I expected to. More than might be wise given who your father is." She caught her breath at his directness. "My father doesn't determine who I associate with anymore. No, but he still has power in this county. I wouldn't want to make things harder for you." Hank's eyes searched hers. "But if you're willing to risk it, I'd very much like to continue seeing you." Heart hammering, Olivia made her choice. "I left my father's house because I wanted the freedom to make my own decisions, and I decide I would like to see more of you too, Hank Adamson." The smile that spread across his face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. He didn't try to kiss her, that would have been too forward for a first outing, but the way his hand briefly covered hers on the seat between them conveyed everything words could not. The following weeks established a pattern. Hank would call on Olivia Wednesday evenings and Sunday afternoons. They attended church together, walked by the creek, and once rode to a nearby meadow where wildflowers carpeted the ground in brilliant colors. Always, they talked about books, about the town, about their dreams and disappointments. Olivia learned that beneath Hank's capable exterior lay a thoughtful soul with unexpected depths. He discovered her quick wit and growing independence, so different from the sheltered society girl she'd once been. With each meeting, the connection between them deepened. Not everyone approved. Whispers followed them around town, the disinherited daughter and the cowboy foreman. Some said she was lowering herself, others that he was aiming above his station. Olivia found she cared less about such talk with each passing day. True to Martha's warning, however, George Johnson did not remain inactive. 6 weeks after Olivia's first picnic with Hank, her father's lawyer appeared at the schoolhouse door. "Miss Johnson," he greeted her formally, "your father wishes to speak with you. He's prepared to reconsider your position in the family if you'll return home." Hope briefly flared in Olivia's heart, quickly tempered by suspicion. "And what conditions accompany this generous offer?" The lawyer's hesitation told her everything. "Mr. Montgomery has agreed to overlook your previous indiscretion, provided you approach the match with a proper attitude going forward." The hope withered and died. "Please inform my father that my answer remains unchanged. I will not marry Percival Montgomery. Miss Johnson, be reasonable. Your current situation is hardly sustainable. Teaching children for pennies, living in a glorified shed, it may be simple, but it's honest work and an honest life." Olivia straightened her shoulders. "And it's my choice." After the lawyer departed, Olivia sat at her desk, trembling slightly with the aftermath of confrontation. Her father's attempt to bring her to heel suggested he was growing impatient. The question was, what would he do next? She didn't have to wait long to find out. The following day, as her students were reciting multiplication tables, the schoolhouse door opened to admit Willoughby and 2 other board members. Their grim expressions sent a chill down Olivia's spine. "Children, please continue your recitations while I speak with these gentlemen," she instructed, moving to the back of the room. Willoughby wasted no time on pleasantries. "Miss Johnson, it has come to our attention that your conduct has become a subject of concern." "My conduct?" Olivia kept her voice low but couldn't entirely hide her indignation. "In what way?" The men exchanged uncomfortable glances. "Your association with certain elements. Being seen unchaperoned with a cowhand. Mr. Adamson is the foreman of one of the largest ranches in the county," she corrected coldly. and our association has been entirely proper. Regardless, Willoughby pressed on, the board feels that the schoolteacher must maintain standards above reproach. Several families have expressed concern about the example being set. Understanding dawned. My father has threatened to withdraw his business from your bank if you don't dismiss me, hasn't he? The banker's flush confirmed her suspicion. Your position is probationary, Miss Johnson. We're exercising our right to terminate that probation. You have until the end of the week. After they left, Olivia somehow managed to continue teaching through the day, though the words on her lesson plans blurred through unshed tears. When the children departed, she sank into her chair, despair washing over her. Everything she'd built over these months, her independence, her purpose, her home, was being stripped away. Where would she go? What would she do? The money she'd saved wouldn't last long, and teaching positions wouldn't open again until fall. A knock at the door roused her from these dark thoughts. Hank stood on the threshold, his expression concerned. One of the kids told their ma you seemed upset. Word reached the ranch. He removed his hat, stepping inside. What's happened, Olivia? The simple kindness in his voice broke the dam. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she explained the board's decision and her father's machinations. Hank listened, his expression darkening with each word. That's beyond unfair, he said when she finished. They have no right to dismiss you for spending time with me. They have every right. My position was probationary. Olivia wiped her eyes with a handkerchief. I have no recourse. Hank paced the small schoolroom, his movements those of a caged predator. This is my fault. If I hadn't pursued you, don't. Olivia rose, stopping him with a hand on his arm. I don't regret a single moment with you, Hank. Even knowing it would end this way, I would choose the same path. He covered her hand with his, eyes intense. It doesn't have to end. I've been thinking for a while now, but this settles it. Taking a deep breath, he continued. Come with me to the Triple R. Mrs. Russell needs help with household accounts and correspondence. She's mentioned it more than once since learning about you. Live at the ranch. Olivia was scandalized despite herself. That would confirm every rumor. As a guest of the Russells, not me, Hank clarified quickly. In the main house. Everything proper and above board. It would be temporary just until. He faltered. Until what? The vulnerability returned to his expression. Until you decide if what's growing between us might be enough to build a future on. Olivia's heart raced. Are you asking? Not yet. He took both her hands in his. It's too soon, and you've had enough men trying to decide your fate, but I want you to know that's where my thoughts are heading. When you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'll be waiting. She should have hesitated, should have considered all the implications and consequences. Instead, Olivia found herself nodding. I'll speak with Mrs. Russell tomorrow. The Russells' sprawling ranch house welcomed Olivia with unexpected warmth. Eleanor Russell, a practical woman in her 50s with kind eyes and capable hands, showed her to a comfortable bedroom overlooking the mountains. We're glad to have you, Miss Johnson, she said sincerely. My correspondence has fallen woefully behind, and these old eyes strain at the ledgers more each year. I'm grateful for the opportunity, Mrs. Russell. The older woman patted her hand. Hank speaks very highly of you. That carries weight in this house. Her smile turned mischievous. Though I've instructed him to restrict his visits to the parlor and only at appropriate hours. We'll have no gossip if I can help it. True to her word, Eleanor enforced strict propriety. Hank took his meals with the other ranch hands in the bunkhouse and visited the main house only in the evenings when work permitted. Even then, either Eleanor or her husband Thomas was always present in the parlor, ostensibly reading or knitting while Hank and Olivia conversed. Despite these restrictions, Olivia found her feelings for Hank deepening. Seeing him in his element directing ranch hands, working with horses, resolving disputes with neighboring ranchers revealed new facets of the man she'd come to care for. His natural leadership and quiet authority earned him respect from men twice his age. For his part, Hank watched with admiration as Olivia adapted to ranch life. She took her duties seriously, transforming the Russells' chaotic accounts into orderly ledgers and composing correspondence that impressed even Thomas, a man not given to easy praise. "That girl's got a head for business," Olivia overheard him telling Hank one evening. "Caught an error in the cattle tallies that would have cost us nearly $1,000. 3 weeks into her stay, disaster struck. A wildfire ignited in the dry hills west of the ranch, driven by strong winds directly toward the Triple R. All hands mobilized to fight the blaze and move cattle to safety. Olivia refused to stay behind with a leaner. "I can help," she insisted, tying back her hair and donning a borrowed pair of denims that scandalized the ranch cook. "I'm stronger than I look." The next 24 hours blurred into a hellish landscape of smoke, flames, and desperate effort. Olivia worked alongside the men, her city-soft hands blistering as she helped dig fire breaks and move valuables from outlying buildings. She witnessed Hank's leadership in crisis calm, decisive, inspiring others through the worst moments when the fire jumped containment and threatened the main ranch buildings. Just before dawn, when exhaustion had nearly claimed her, Olivia lost track of Hank in the confusion. Then came shouts from the burning stable. 2 horses remained trapped inside. Without hesitation, Hank rushed into the blazing building. Minutes passed. The roof began to collapse. Olivia's heart seemed to stop beating entirely. Then, miraculously, Hank appeared through the smoke, a horse's reins in each hand, his shirt singed and face blackened. As the stable roof crashed down behind him, he handed the horses to waiting ranch hands before collapsing to his knees, coughing violently. Olivia was at his side instantly, helping him away from the heat, pressing a water-soaked cloth to his face. "You could have been killed," she cried, fear making her voice sharp through his coughing. Hank managed a smile. "Couldn't let them burn," he rasped. "Good horses. Better than your life." Tears streaked through the soot on her face. "Don't you dare do something so foolish again, Hank Adamson. Not when she broke off, suddenly aware of what she'd been about to say. His eyes, red-rimmed from smoke but intensely blue, locked onto hers. "When you what, Olivia?" She couldn't say it, not here, not like this. But she couldn't deny it either. Instead, she pressed her lips to his smoke-stained forehead, a gesture that spoke volumes to both of them. By midday, the fire was contained, though smaller hotspots would need watching for days. The ranch had lost an outbuilding and some fencing, but no lives, human or animal. As the hands dispersed to rest in shifts, Hank found Olivia at the water pump, washing soot from her arms. "You were amazing out there," he said quietly. She looked up, taking in his exhausted but admiring expression. "I did what needed doing." "No," he stepped closer. "You did more. Men who have worked cattle their whole lives faltered, but you kept going. You're the strongest woman I've ever known, Olivia Johnson." Something in his tone made her pulse quicken. "Hank, I know this isn't the right time or place," he interrupted, "but watching that fire coming for everything I care about it clarifies a man's thinking." He took her soot-streaked hands in his. "I love you, Olivia. I think I have since I first helped you up from that muddy street." The world seemed to still around them, the sounds of the ranch fading, the smell of smoke receding, everything narrowing to this moment, this man. "I love you too," she whispered, the words emerging with surprising ease once she allowed them. "I didn't expect to. I wasn't looking for it. But here it is." The kiss that followed was gentle, mindful of their exhaustion and injuries but filled with promise. When they parted, Hank pressed his forehead to hers. "Marry me, Olivia. Not today or tomorrow whenever you're ready, but say you'll be my wife." "Yes," she answered without hesitation. "Yes, I will." They shared the news with the Russells that evening. Alina embraced Olivia with tears in her eyes while Thomas clapped Hank on the shoulder with gruff approval. "About time you settled down, boy, and you couldn't have chosen better." But celebration gave way to practicality the following day as Hank and Olivia discussed their future. "I've saved enough for a small place," Hank explained, spreading a roughly drawn map on the table. "There's land for sale about 10 miles east, good water, decent grazing. With what I've put aside and the bonus Thomas promised for staying through fall roundup, we could make a start." Olivia studied the map, an idea forming. "My grandmother left me a trust that matures on my 25th birthday or when I marry. Father couldn't touch it, though he likely hoped I'd marry Montgomery before I could claim it independently." Hank's brow furrowed. "I don't want your family's money, Olivia. I can provide for us." "It's not about need," she explained gently. "It's about building something together, combining what we each bring. The trust isn't enormous, but it could mean the difference between struggling for years and establishing a viable ranch from the start." After some discussion, Hank reluctantly agreed. "But we'll build our home with my own hands," he insisted. "No hiring that out." They settled on an October wedding after roundup, but before winter set in. Word of their engagement spread quickly through the county, eventually reaching George Johnson. His response came in the form of another visit from his lawyer, this time to the R. "Your father wishes to speak with you before this engagement proceeds further," the lawyer informed Olivia stiffly. "He's prepared to be reasonable if you'll hear him out." Hank, standing protectively beside her, spoke before she could. "Seems to me Olivia's made her position clear already." The lawyer's gaze flickered dismissively over Hank before returning to Olivia. "This is a family matter, Miss Johnson. Surely you'd prefer to discuss it privately." Something in his tone, the assumption that she would naturally defer to her father's wishes despite everything, kindled Olivia's anger. "Mr. Adamson is to be my husband. Anything you wish to say to me can be said in his presence." The lawyer's mouth tightened with disapproval. "Very well. Your father offers a compromise. He will restore your inheritance and position in the family if you agree to postpone any entanglements for 1 year. During that time, you would return to the family home." "Absolutely not," Olivia interrupted. "I know exactly what would happen. A year of pressure, manipulation, and attempts to separate me from Hank. Tell my father I decline his generous offer." "Miss Johnson, be reasonable. This cowboy," the lawyer gestured dismissively toward Hank, "can hardly offer you the life you were raised for." "Your father only wants—" "My father wants control," she corrected sharply. "He had his chance to be a father to me. He chose to be a tyrant instead. Please leave and don't return unless it's with a genuine desire to mend fences without conditions." After the lawyer departed, Hank pulled Olivia into a gentle embrace. "You're sure about this? That's a lot to give up for a cowboy with rough hands and a small piece of land." She looked up at him, this man who had never once tried to control her choices, who had supported her independence even while offering his heart. "I'm not giving up anything that matters," she assured him. "I'm gaining everything I truly want." The weeks leading to their wedding passed in a blur of preparation. Hank worked from dawn to dusk, managing ranch duties while also beginning construction on their future home. Olivia divided her time between helping Alina, sewing wedding clothes, and accompanying Hank to inspect the property they would soon call their own. The land was everything he had promised: a gentle slope with a clear creek running through it. sheltered pastures, and a stunning view of the mountains. Standing there one evening as sunset painted the landscape in gold and crimson, Olivia felt a deep certainty that she had made the right choice. "I'll build the house there," Hank said, pointing to a flat area near a stand of cottonwoods. South-facing windows to catch the winter sun, porch wrapping around for summer evenings. Olivia leaned into his side, her heart full. "With a room for books, and perhaps a small classroom someday." He grinned down at her. "Anything you want. This place will be ours to shape however we choose." 1 week before the wedding, an unexpected visitor arrived at the Triple R. Olivia was hanging laundry when she heard the sound of an approaching carriage. Turning, she froze at the sight of her mother stepping down with the driver's assistance. "Mama," Olivia whispered, scarcely believing her eyes. Helen Johnson looked older than when Olivia had last seen her, new lines etched around her eyes and mouth. She stood uncertainly, gloved hands clasped before her. "Olivia, my dear girl." They met in the middle of the yard, embracing with tears streaming down both their faces. When they finally parted, Helen cupped her daughter's cheek. "Let me look at you. You're different, stronger somehow." "I've changed," Olivia admitted. "In good ways, I think." Helen nodded, seeming to gather her courage. "Your father doesn't know I'm here. He forbade any contact, but—" She straightened her shoulders. "I couldn't let my daughter marry without her mother present." Fresh tears sprang to Olivia's eyes. "You'll stay for the wedding, if you'll have me. And if I might meet this young man who's won your heart where Percival Montgomery could not." Hank returned from the pastures an hour later to find Olivia and her mother in earnest conversation at the kitchen table. He entered hesitantly, hat in hand, uncertain of his welcome. Olivia's face brightened at his appearance. "Hank, come meet my mother." Helen Johnson rose, studying the tall cowboy with keen eyes. "Mr. Adamson, I understand you're taking my daughter from luxury to a life of hard work and uncertainty." Hank met her gaze steadily. "Yes, madam, though I'd say she's choosing that life alongside me, not being taken to it." A smile tugged at Helen's mouth. "Well put," she glanced at her daughter. "Olivia tells me you believe people deserve to choose their own love." "Yes, madam, I do. Freedom to choose is what makes a choice meaningful." Helen's expression softened. "My husband and I had an arranged marriage. Suitable families, compatible fortunes. It wasn't a terrible match, but—" She looked down briefly. "I've often wondered how different life might have been had I your courage, Olivia." The admission hung in the air, revealing volumes about her parents' marriage that Olivia had never understood. "Mama, no regrets," Helen said firmly. "My choices brought me you and your sister after all." She turned back to Hank. "Take care of her, Mr. Adamson, not because she needs protection, but because she deserves a partner who values her strength." "Yes, madam," Hank replied solemnly. "Every day of my life." Helen stayed at the Triple R for the days leading up to the wedding, helping with final preparations and getting to know her future son-in-law. Her presence was a balm to Olivia's soul, healing wounds she hadn't fully acknowledged. The night before the ceremony, Helen presented Olivia with a small wooden box. "Your grandmother's pearls," she explained as Olivia lifted the necklace. "She wore them at her wedding and I at mine. Your father doesn't know I took them from the safe." "Mama." Olivia was shocked at this small rebellion. Helen's smile held a hint of mischief. "Perhaps you're not the only Johnson woman finding her courage." The wedding day dawned clear and bright, the October air crisp with the promise of approaching winter. The ceremony took place in the Triple Artique's front yard, decorated with autumn wildflowers and ribbons. Reverend Simmons from the Sheridan Church officiated, while ranch hands and town friends gathered to witness. Olivia wore a simple gown of ivory silk purchased with her mother's help, rather than made by her own inexperienced hands with her grandmother's pearls at her throat. Hank cut a striking figure in a new black suit, his usually unruly hair tamed for the occasion. As they exchanged vows beneath an arch of twisted willow branches, Olivia felt none of the doubt or hesitation she might have expected. This was right. This was her choice, a love built on respect, admiration, and genuine partnership. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the Reverend declared. "Mr. Adamson, you may kiss your bride." The kiss they shared was brief but heartfelt, accompanied by whoops and cheers from the ranch hands, when they turned to face their guests as Mr. and Mrs. Adamson. For the first time, Olivia noticed a latecomer standing at the edge of the gathering. Her father, George Johnson, stood stiffly apart from the celebration, his expression unreadable. When their eyes met, he gave a single, almost imperceptible nod before turning to leave. "Do you want to go after him?" Hank asked quietly, having followed her gaze. Olivia considered the question, then shook her head. No, that nod was the closest he could come to acceptance. For now, it's enough. The celebration continued well into evening music from a ranch hand's fiddle, dancing on the packed earth of the yard, food prepared by a leaner and neighboring ranch wives. Through it all, Hank kept Olivia close, his pride evident in every glance and touch. As sunset approached, they slipped away to begin the journey to their new home. Though the house wasn't quite finished, enough had been completed for them to spend their first night there, the beginning of their life together. Hank had surprised her by finishing the bedroom completely, with a real bedstead ordered from Denver and curtains a leaner had helped him select. As he carried her over the threshold in the traditional manner, Olivia felt a surge of emotion so powerful it brought tears to her eyes. "Welcome home, Mrs. Adamson," he said, setting her gently on her feet. Olivia turned slowly, taking in the rough-hewn walls that would someday be smoothed and papered, the simple furniture, the empty spaces waiting to be filled with the life they would build together. It was nothing like the mansion she'd grown up in, yet infinitely more precious. "It's perfect," she whispered. "Absolutely perfect." The months that followed tested their commitment in ways neither had fully anticipated. Winter came early and harsh. The house, still partially unfinished, proved drafty in Wyoming winds. Their small herd required constant attention in the bitter cold. Money was tighter than expected as they established their ranch. Yet in those challenges, their bond only strengthened. Olivia learned to cook over a temperamental wood stove, to mend fences alongside Hank, to assist with calving in pre-dawn hours. She started a small school in one room of their home, teaching neighboring ranchers' children 3 days a week for modest fees that helped their finances. Hank watched his city-bred wife adapt to ranch life with amazement and pride. When she mastered riding astride rather than side saddle to better help with cattle, he laughed with delight at her transformation. When she stayed up all night with a sick calf, refusing to give up until it rallied, he knew he'd found not just a wife but a true partner. Spring brought new beginnings. The last room of their house was finally completed. Their first crops were planted. And Olivia discovered she was expecting their first child. "A baby," Hank whispered when she shared the news, his hand gentle on her still flat stomach. "Our baby." The wonder in his voice matched the feeling in Olivia's heart. "Due in November, the doctor thinks." "Before winter sets in hard," he noted practically, mind already turning to preparations. "We'll need to finish the addition sooner than planned, make sure the roof is secure for certain." Olivia laughed, catching his face between her hands. "Always the planner." "Can we just enjoy the moment before you start rebuilding the house?" His smile softened as he pulled her close. "You're right, this is a moment to savor." He kissed her tenderly. I love you, Olivia Adamson. More today than yesterday, and I expect that pattern to continue for the next 50 years or so. The summer passed in a blur of ranch work and preparation for the baby. Hank insisted on building a proper cradle, laboring over it in the evenings with painstaking care. Olivia sewed tiny garments, each stitch a testament to her growing excitement. Helen visited twice, bringing baby clothes and advice. Her relationship with George remained strained, but she had found new independence in his continued anger, establishing her own social connections apart from his influence. "Your sister sends her love," she told Olivia during her second visit. "She stood up to your father more since you left. I think you inspired her." In August, an unexpected letter arrived from Martha Wilson. Percival Montgomery had died suddenly of a heart attack, leaving no heirs. His vast holdings would be divided and sold at auction. "It changes nothing," Olivia insisted when Hank mentioned it. "I'd choose you 1,000 times over with or without Montgomery in the picture." Hank's smile held a hint of sadness. "But it might change things with your father. Without Montgomery pushing, he might be more willing to reconcile." She considered this, one hand resting on her now prominent belly. "Perhaps, but that would be his choice to make, not mine to pursue." As autumn painted the landscape in golds and reds, a rider brought news that shocked them both. George Johnson was ill, possibly dying, and asking for his daughter. "You should go," Hank urged, though concern shadowed his eyes as he looked at her 8 months pregnant form. "I'll drive you to Sheridan myself." The journey was uncomfortable, the buggies jostling making Olivia wince with each bump in the road. By the time they reached her childhood home, she was exhausted and aching. The mansion seemed smaller somehow, less imposing than in her memory. A maid showed them to the sitting room where Helen waited, her face drawn with worry. "Olivia, thank goodness." She embraced her daughter carefully, nodding respectfully to Hank. "Your father's had a stroke, the doctor says." She hesitated. "It doesn't look good. He's been asking for you." Hank squeezed Olivia's hand. "I'll wait here. Take all the time you need." George Johnson lay in the massive 4-poster bed that had dominated her parents' bedroom for as long as Olivia could remember. His large frame seemed diminished, his right side motionless, his face partially slack. But his eyes, those stern eyes that had demanded perfection throughout her childhood, were alert and focused intently on her as she entered. "Father," she said softly, lowering herself carefully into the chair beside his bed. He struggled to speak, the words slurred and difficult to understand. "You came. Of course I came." His left hand moved jerkily toward hers. After a moment's hesitation, Olivia took it. "Wrong," he managed. "Was wrong." Tears sprang to her eyes at this admission so long awaited, now offered when speech itself was a battle. "It's all right, Father." He shook his head with frustration, clearly wanting to say more but trapped by his failing body. Finally, he forced out 3 words. "You were right." Something long knotted in Olivia's heart began to unravel. "Thank you for saying that." They sat in silence for several minutes, his breathing labored, her thoughts tumbling. Finally, he gestured weakly toward her belly. "My grandchild." "Yes," she confirmed. "Due in November." His next words surprised her completely. "Adamson. Good man." Olivia nodded, tears flowing freely now. "The best man I've ever known." Something like approval flickered in her father's eyes. He fumbled for something on the bedside table, a folded document that he pressed into her hand with surprising strength. "Yours, always, meant for you." Later, with Hank beside her for support, Olivia unfolded the paper to discover the deed to a significant parcel of land, the western section of her father's holdings that bordered their small ranch. "He's giving us land?" Hank asked incredulously. It's his way of apologizing, Olivia realized, and ensuring his grandchild's future. George Johnson died peacefully 3 days later, having made what peace he could with both his daughters and his wife. The funeral was well attended, Sheridan's prominent citizens paying respects to one of the county's wealthiest ranchers. Standing beside her mother and sister at the graveside, with Hank a solid presence at her back, Olivia felt the complex mix of emotions that often characterizes relationships between strong-willed parents and children: regret for what might have been, gratitude for the reconciliation that came at the end, and a bittersweet acceptance that some wounds heal only partially. The journey home was made slowly and carefully, with frequent stops to allow Olivia to stretch her increasingly uncomfortable body. The additional land would transform their modest ranch into a substantial operation, presenting both opportunity and challenge. "We don't have to decide anything right away," Hank assured her as they crested the rise that revealed their small house in the distance. "The land will wait until after the baby comes." Olivia smiled, leaning against his shoulder. "I think we should call it Johnson Adamson Ranch. To honor both our beginnings." "I like that." Hank kissed her temple. "A legacy for our children." Their son arrived 2 weeks later during a clear, cold November night. After hours of labor that left Hank pacing anxiously under the midwife's stern gaze, James Thomas Adamson announced his presence with lusty cries that echoed through the small house. "He has your eyes," Olivia whispered as Hank held his son for the first time. Awe and terror mingled on his face. "And I think he'll have your stubborn chin." Hank laughed shakily, carefully returning the swaddled infant to her arms. "Poor kid. Let's hope he gets your brains to balance things out." As winter settled over their expanded ranch, the Adamsons established new rhythms around their infant son. Olivia found motherhood both more challenging and more rewarding than she had anticipated. Hank proved an attentive father, often carrying James in a sling against his chest while completing lighter ranch chores. Spring brought new calves, green pastures, and plans for expanding both their herd and their home. With the additional land came greater responsibilities, but also increased prosperity. By James's first birthday, they had hired 2 permanent ranch hands and added a proper office to the house for managing the growing operation. Olivia resumed teaching neighboring children 3 days a week, now with James playing on a blanket nearby or napping in a cradle Hank had placed in the schoolroom. Word of her educational approach spread, bringing requests from families as far as 20 miles away. "I've been thinking," she told Hank one evening as they sat on their completed wrap-around porch, watching sunset paint the distant mountains. "What if we built a proper school, not just for children but for women who want to further their education?" Instead of dismissing the idea as impractical, Hank considered it thoughtfully. "On the ranch, or in town? In town might be better, more accessible to more people." Excitement built as she outlined her vision. Not just reading and figures, but science, literature, maybe even college preparation for those who want it. "The Olivia Adamson Academy," Hank mused, smiling at her enthusiasm, "has a nice ring to it." She leaned against him, grateful once again for this man who encouraged her dreams rather than limiting them. "We could use some of my trust fund. It wouldn't affect ranch operations. If it's important to you, it's important to me." He wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "Besides, Wyoming's going to be a state soon. We should lead the way in showing what women can accomplish when given the chance." 2 years later, on a bright September morning in 1890, Olivia stood before the newly completed schoolhouse on the edge of Sheridan. A small crowd gathered for the opening ceremony. At her side stood Hank, holding their 2-year-old son James while their 6-month-old daughter Sarah slept in her grandmother's arms. "The Sheridan Academy for Advanced Learning," Olivia announced, her voice carrying across the assembled townspeople. "Open to all who seek knowledge, regardless of gender or background." As applause rose from the crowd, Hank leaned close to whisper in her ear, "Proud of you, Mrs. Adamson." Olivia squeezed his hand, thinking of the journey that had brought her here from pampered society daughter to banished outcast to independent woman standing on her own achievements. None of it would have happened had she not refused that cruel arranged match, had she not found the courage to choose her own path. And none of it would have mattered half as much without the love of the man beside her, the cowboy who had once told a despairing young woman that she deserved to choose her love. "Thank you," she whispered back, "for everything." That evening, with their children asleep and the day's excitement behind them, Hank and Olivia sat on their porch swing, watching stars appear in the Wyoming sky. Their ranch spread before them, cattle grazing peacefully in moonlit pastures, the future stretching as vast and promising as the western horizon. "Did you ever imagine this?" Olivia asked, her head resting on Hank's shoulder. "That day when you helped me up from the muddy street, did you see any of this coming?" Hank chuckled, his arm tightening around her. "Can't say I foresaw becoming a respectable rancher married to the founder of Sheridan's first academy for women." His voice softened. "But I knew you were special. Knew I wanted to know the woman who'd stand up to George Johnson and Percival Montgomery. And now, he turned to face her, the love of nearly 5 years still bright in his eyes. "Now I'm just grateful every day that you chose me, that you had the courage to build this life with me." Olivia's heart swelled with contentment as she leaned in to kiss him. "The best choice I ever made," she whispered against his lips, "and one I'd make again every day for the rest of our lives." As the evening breeze carried the scent of sage and pine across their land, Olivia Adamson reflected that true freedom wasn't found in rebellion or even independence, but in the power to choose one's path, to choose one's purpose, and most importantly, to choose one's love. In making that choice authentically, she had found not just happiness, but a fulfillment deeper than anything she could have imagined in her previous life of privilege and constraint. The life she and Hank had built together wasn't perfect or easy, but it was genuinely theirs, shaped by their values, nurtured by their efforts, and sustained by a love born of mutual respect and admiration. A love chosen freely, with open eyes and willing hearts. And in that choice had bloomed everything else: family, purpose, community, legacy. As stars multiplied in the darkening sky, Hank began to sing softly, an old trail song about finding home after long wandering. Olivia joined in, their voices blending in the night air, carrying across the land that was their shared dream made manifest. Tomorrow would bring new challenges: cattle to tend, children to nurture, students to teach. But tonight, in this moment of quiet togetherness, they savored the simple truth that had defined their journey. When given the freedom to choose one's own love, the heart seldom chooses wrong.